Going back to Dr. Doug Rokke, one of the top experts in the world on DU, even according to the Pentagon, who he worked for. Dr. Rokke, let's talk about the real health effects in the studies and what they've known DU does and how it's a toxic byproduct of spent fuel rods from nuclear reactors. But more importantly, I want to ask you now about the mindset of the elite. I mean, they had DU in the 40s and 50s, and I saw papers where they talked about it as a weapon, and they said we can't use it because it kills our own personnel and people that move into the areas. What changed in the mindset where they wouldn't use it in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and now it's just, we're going to use it at local shooting ranges for the military. We're going to use it in Hawaii. We're going to use it in Puerto Rico. We're going to tell the troops it's okay and watch them die. I mean, this is psychopathic murder.
Yes, it is. It's just the fact that they made the decision that human life had no value, that animals had no value, that food has no value, and they just made a conscious decision, and I've been fighting this since I did all the research for them, the Nevada test site, and wrote the directives. They just don't care. But as you said, the health and environmental effects, all this have always been known. I mean, my own medical care for my depleted uranium exposures, because of my assigned duties, one of the things I forced it with was the original 1973 report on the use of uranium emissions by Israelis against the Egyptians in the Sinai. And all of that stuff was known then. It was documented there in the official reports. And again, these are not classified, but they just totally there and they totally ignore it. Prior to Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom, Colonel J. Edgar Wakayama, who's the director of the U.S. Department of Defense Operational Test and Evaluation Command, gave a briefing to all the senior generals and everybody in the Pentagon upon depleted uranium, how it works, what it is, the fact that the munitions, as you said, go all the way down to the M16 rifle, 50 cal, everything all the way up. But in this briefing, he stated very specifically, I'm going to quote very, very specifically, depleted uranium munitions, when used, okay, they emit alpha, beta, and gamma particle and X-rays. The alpha particle taken inside the body in large doses is hazardous, producing cell damage and cancer. Quote, lung cancer is well documented. We continue on. Beta particle is hazardous to the skin and the lens of the eye. Now, personally, I've learned that because of all my radiation cataracts and the other problems with the eyes, and everybody else is reporting it. It continues on, very, 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 very direct, and it says, DU is chemically toxic. We look at all this stuff. We have total confirmation. Quote, urine samples containing uranium are mutagenic as determined by the Ames test. The cultured human stem bone cell line with DU also transforms the cells that become carcinogenic. That's the reason why we're seeing so incredible levels of leukemia in all these young kids coming back from Desert Storm. But we're also seeing leukemia in the children, the offspring of those who were exposed during Desert Storm.
Because just like fluoride, the particle's so small, Doctor, correct me if I'm wrong, it precipitates into the bone. That's
correct. There is no respiratory skin protection that'll work. Even though when we did all this work for the military, the Department of Energy gave us their best respirators, the Army gave us their best respirators, it went through it like an open barn door. It absolutely does it. One of the big problems, quote from the Wakayama briefing, I'm going to read this because it's astonishing. They know and they disregard it. The three major routes of human exposure to DU are wounding by shrapnel, inhalation, lungs and thoracic lymph nodes, ingestions, most among children playing and eating contaminated soil and contaminated drinking water and food in the community, end quote. That is what we're seeing throughout Iraq.
And that's from what year?
Pardon me?
What year was that report?
This is a briefing to the senior Pentagon leadership in 2002 before the start of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom.
And again, I'm going from memory interviewing you and others and reading mainstream news, but I saw reports in the 50s it was a secret weapon they were only going to use if the Russians flooded into Eastern Europe, but they said we still don't advise because it ruins the area for billions of years. I mean, they know this. It's just so incredible, and they know... I mean, I see the numbers of troops coming back and dropping dead and getting cancer and getting leukemia and other blood cancers, and they know it's killing them. I mean, we ought to make all these generals go into the proving grounds and snort a line of DU if it's so good.
When I specifically talked to the generals in Washington, D.C., as I've done in the last few weeks, and ask them very specifically for help in getting medical care, environmental remediation, they just say, go to your congressman and senator, we're not going to help you.
And I noticed those troops have told me, and I've seen it in the news, the generals won't stay in these bombed-out buildings like they tell the troops to. And notice none of these generals want to stay in Iraq very long. Dr. Rokke, long segment coming up. Roll through the documents for people, because all you folks out there that claim you love the troops so much and stick American flags on your car, I was trying to make the point that all these people that stick stickers on their cars and talk about how much they love the troops, they just like to go to football games, put their hand on their heart and cry, and to them, patriotism's more wars, more death, more tyranny, more enslavement. I mean, it must be, because DU is well known. It's killing our sons and daughters. It's killing the people, the innocent people we bomb with it years after. Dr. Rokke, I mean, what's the half-life of depleted uranium? How long is it deadly?
Longer than the age of the Earth. I mean, one half-life is 4.5 billion years, and you have to go through 10 half-lives, so that's 45 billion years to even think about it being safe radiologically.
So 45 billion years, and last number I had was at least 10 proving grounds in the U.S. are using this just all over the place, and they've just gotten to the point where they don't even tell the troops there's any danger.
That's correct, but one of the most, and we've talked about this before, on the 18th of April of 75, hardly a man is left alive. Our nation was born in Concord, Massachusetts in 1775. Concord, Massachusetts is the site of the StarMet depleted uranium munitions plant that's been closed, and it has incredible environmental and medical disasters as a consequence of that. And when you look at what's happening, it goes back, and again, here is the direct quote from the Wakayama briefing. For the emerging environmental concerns include, quote, a significant exposure to depleted uranium among children playing in impact sites by ingesting heavily contaminated soil, slow leaching of depleted uranium in the local water supplies for years, and consuming depleted uranium-contaminated food and sources, animals, and plants, end quote. So with all of these things that we know what's going to happen, if you're a injured, ill, wounded veteran, or you've got cross-contaminated from the stuff being brought back to the United States or Europe, wherever you are, you're cross-contaminated your family. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs in Vision 11, this is the region here that takes in East Central Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio. The director, Barbara Hyduke, totally acknowledges that, quote, these, and I'm going to quote this exactly, read it exactly, some of the physical symptoms which occur as a result of exposure to depleted uranium are sleep problems, mood swings, symptoms in upper and lower respiratory system, neuropsychological symptoms including memory loss, chronic fatigue, immune dysfunction syndrome, skin rashes, unusual hair loss, aching joints, headaches, abdominal pain, sensitivity to light, blurred vision, menstrual disorders, gastrointestinal symptoms, recurrent diarrhea and constipation, nervous systems disorders such as numbness in a limb, multiple chemical sensitivity, and birth defects in children whose parents were exposed, end quote. It's that, I mean, within their own documents, they thoroughly, totally acknowledge it, okay?
And Dr. Rokke, what about all the mainstream reports I've seen of radiation detectors worldwide, especially during a new war, picking it up in the atmosphere?
That is absolutely correct. Dr. Chris Busby, Professor Chris Busby in England, who is probably one of the world's leading, if not the world's leading experts on low-level radioactivity, thoroughly confirmed that the contamination from the Middle East reached Northern Europe and England, thoroughly confirmed it without any question whatsoever. And so we're seeing all of this stuff. And as a consequence from all of this, okay, we have to come back to the requirements for the Department of the Defense. General Eric Shinseki, when he was a commanding general, signed and mandated U.S. Army Regulation 700-48 that I wrote, my team wrote. He, in this regulation, what it requires, quote, during peacetime or soon as operational risk permits, the Corps Joint Task Force Division Commander's Radiation Safety Officer will identify, segregate, isolate, secure, and label all radiologically contaminated equipment. Procedures to minimize the spread of activity will be implemented as soon as, immediately, as soon as possible. We continue on this stuff. The requirement is to take care and get rid of all the explosives, all of the hazardous material stuff that must be done. But when we come on down to the real fundamental stuff on handling all of this stuff, okay? Every individual in the Army has a responsibility to do it properly, and the personnel will. Quote, all equipment to include captured or combat radioactive equipment will be surveyed, packaged, retrograded, and decontaminated and released in accordance with the Technical Bulletin 9/1300-278.
Fuel rods from nuclear reactors. But more importantly, I want to ask you now about the mindset of the elite. I mean, they had DU in the 40s and 50s, and I saw papers where they talked about it as a weapon, and they said we can't use it because it kills our own personnel and people that move. Okay, and watch them die. I mean, this is psychopathic murder.
Yes, it is. It's just the fact that they made the decision that human life had no value, that animals had no value, that food has no value, and they just made a conscious decision. And I've been
going back to Dr. Doug Rokke, one of the top experts in the world on DU, even according to the Pentagon, who he worked for. Dr. Rokke, let's talk about the real health effects in the studies and what they've known DU does and how it's a toxic byproduct of spent move into the areas. What changed in the mindset where they wouldn't use it in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and now it's just, we're going to use it at local shooting ranges for the military. We're going to use it in Hawaii. We're going to use it in Puerto Rico. We're going to tell the troops it's...
been fighting this since I did all the research for them, the Nevada test site, wrote the directives. They just don't care. But as you said, the health and environmental effects of all this have always been known. I mean, my own medical care for my depleted